Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Maayong adlaw sa tanan,
It is indeed a pleasant day. I am Makasayon.
and I am GNB Permato.
So for today's discussion is all about the effective assessment tools. At the end of the video, the learners are expected to understand the effective assessment tools. Second is to distinguish the various types of effective assessment tools. And lastly is to demonstrate reflection about the topic. So I'll ask you, what do you know about effective assessment tools? So, the assessment tools in the affective domain are those that are used to assess students' attitudes, interests, values, motivations, and self-efficacy. We consider a few of the standard assessment tools in the affective domain. So, here are the tools for effective assessment tools.
First is the self-report. So it is used to diagnose students' emotional or intellectual state or even assess change in students' motivation, attitude, or interest before and after the instruction. It is easy to administer, but gathering of factual data is questioned about its truthfulness or biases. Under the self-report are the Likert scale, checklist, and semantic differential scale. So let's take a look first on the Likert scale. Likert scale is a simple and widely used self-report method in assessing affect. It is developed by Francis Likert. It gives different perception of what the respondents or students think or feel. Response can be in a numeric or descriptive form, and it requires the respondents to rate or select a scale reflecting the level of agreement or disagreement in items relating to a particular experience, issue, or topic. So this is the example that I made. I follow the guidelines in constructing Likert scale instrument presented from the video of teacher Claire, which are to avoiding factual statements. Statements should be relevant to the construct being measured. Statements should refer to the present condition. Avoid double negative statements. Fifth is to use vocabulary appropriate to students' level of understanding. Six is the response in the instrument should reflect progression. And seventh, the statement should elicit a response with itself to one interpretation. Next is the checklist. It is the most common and perhaps the easiest instrument to construct in the affective domain. It consists of simple items that the student or teacher marks as absent or present. The example that is shown on the right side is the instrument that we use as we conduct survey about the use of ICT tools in teaching and learning for teachers in our CPE107 subject. So as we observe, the attributes, characteristics are enumerated in the range. Also, the instruction and responding was indicated. Those are important things to consider in constructing checklists. Next is the semantic differential scale. It was designed by Charles E. Usgood, an American psychologist in 1979. It tries to assess an individual's reaction to a specific words, ideas, or concepts in terms of ratings on bipolar scales defined with contrasting adjective at each end. Just like in the example, from the word expensive to the other side inexpensive, and so on and so forth.
So the next tool will be interview. This tool is an oral assessment of students' learning conducted through spoken words. These assessment tools allow the teacher to collect and explore more in-depth information on a trait being assessed that cannot be captured in a written instrument. It provides students the opportunity to open their thoughts or ideas, as it enables teachers to be flexible in adapting questions. So we have two types of interview, the structured interview and the unstructured interview. So let's talk about the structured interview first. So this is where there is a planned sequence of questions or interview guide, leading to an open-ended discussions between the teacher and the students, either by a group or individually. This takes more time as it requires a preparation plan, unlike the unstructured interview. One limitation is the predetermined questions that limit the flexibility. Meanwhile, the unstructured interview is a conversational and rehearsed interview style that does not have a specific list of questions meant to be asked in a particular order. It dives into deeper discussions, and the teacher can elicit more truthful information from the respondents or students as it adapts to the topics that the students want. So for the steps in conducting interview, firstly is to select the assessment objectives. Second is to list oral question sequence based on the objectives. Third is to make a record note to capture both verbal and nonverbal behavior. Lastly is to conduct the interview.
So next is the student journal. Student journal are a specific assessment tool teacher can use to examine students' learning in the affective and cognitive domains. Affective and cognitive domains since it assesses students' learning as well as students' perception of learning activities and the learning environment. So the example is, like for example, in the student journal entries of students, they communicate frustration with other class members regarding what might be impeding their ability to learn and enjoy physical education. This information can be used to enhance instruction as well as guide the teacher in planning future lessons.
So the next tool will be observation. This is a tool that can be used to find out the presence or absence of behavior in a natural setting. It enables the teacher to assess a person's behavior in an actual teaching learning process. This can be both obtrusive and unobtrusive measures of dispositions, characters, attitudes, and others. In this, we also have structured and unstructured observation. The structured observation requires a checklist or rating form before an actual observation. It is also a non-participant method. It uses predetermined observation categories, while the unstructured observation is an open-ended with no formal recording while observation is ongoing. It is also criticized as subjective, taking into account personal interpretation of the observed data.
Next is the rating scale. Rating scale is a set of categories designed to elicit information about a quantitative attribute in social science. According to Nippon 2001, rating scales can be used for teaching purposes and assessment. First, rating scales help students understand the learning target or outcomes and to focus students' attention and performance. Second, completed rating scale gives specified feedback to students as far as their strengths and weaknesses. Third, students not only learn the standards but also may internalize a set of standards. Fourth, ratings help to show each student's growth and progress. There are two types of rating scale. First is the numerical rating scale. The numerical rating scale translates the judgment of quality or degree into numbers, just like what you observe on the right side. Next is the descriptive graphic rating scale. A better format for rating is the descriptive rating scale. It replaces the ambiguous single word with short behavioral description of the various points along the scale. That is shown, or the example is shown on the right side. Next are the common errors in rating scale. Leniency error, severity error, central tendency error, halo effect, personal bias, and logical error.
So for the last two, we have the sentence completion. Sentence completion tests the skill to use the information observed in the complex and incomplete sentences in order to correctly complete them. It tests a candidate's vocabulary, power, and skills to follow the logic of the sentences. These sentences are often quite complex. The picture on the right side is the example of sentence completion.
So
For the
next
summary
are
of
the
the task,
summary. Next is the mind map. So the central point is the effective assessment tools. On the left side are the self-report. Under the self-report is the Likert scale, checklist, semantic differential scale, then student journal, and rating scale. Rating scale have two types, the numerical rating scale and the descriptive graphic rating scale.
while on the other hand, the right, we have interview, observation, and sentence completion. Under the interview, we have the structured and unstructured interview. And also the observation, we also have the structured observation and unstructured observation. So for this module, I have learned the various tools which can help us to be more efficient educator in the near future, as it opens up a door for me to learn more and to be a good educator by using tools I have learned. In the near future where we would face uncertainties, we need to prepare a tool to cope up with it. And with this, I am now introduced towards another learning that will help me in the future when I would be in the field of teaching. And not long ago, we've made an activity on how to construct one of the assessment tools. And I can say that I faced a bumpy kind of road towards it, but I made it fortunately. As I realized that this kind of thing is what would I be facing soon, I was challenged to make a better evaluation form that may help me to do a better thinking about what would I do to assess my students better. Because with this, I could evaluate my future students with confidence and assess them towards the good education we dream. We've applied the depth and core values to make a sample and assessment tools. With this, we really are challenged to brainstorm to do our best to make a better assessment material that will also help us to be a more better educator. As a conclusion, I can say that it is a challenging but fun activity. It really taught us towards another learning that we may use to be a good and fair educator soon. How about you, Jen?
So for me, I have learned a lot from the module. I was enlightened about the importance of considering the affective domain of students, since the feeling or attitude of the student's emotion are usually attached with whatever is being taught to them. In terms of assessing students' affective domain, it is really difficult and impossible to assess because attitude, feelings, and values can be concealed in deep. But then there are still tools to assess students' affective domain, such as self-report, Likert scale, semantic differential scale, checklist, interview, journal, observation, rating scale, and sentence completion. In the module, a video lecture was provided. It helped us a lot to understand more these different assessment tools, saw examples, and it even provided guidelines in constructing various assessment tools. We are tasked to construct Likert scale and structured interview assessment. The Likert scale that I had constructed was shown in the discussion earlier. At first, I was confused on how to start constructing these effective assessment tools, but then the guidelines and examples given me helped me in crafting one. Overall, learning about effective assessment tools is fun and very informative, and we should be reminded that we should be responsible in choosing appropriate effective assessment tools in assessing as a student and as a future educator.
So that is all for our video.